Congratulations on your new knitting machine. Addi Express, the Sentro, the larger, and the Sentro, the 22 needle you see I have here. I'm going to help you get started with whichever machine you have. You may also have the smaller version of the Addi, which is very similar to the small 22 needle Sentro. First, you need to familiarize with yourself with the different parts of each machine, because each machine has slightly different components. But the most common in each of these are they each have a carriage. This is the carriage of your machine here. Needles, and the carriage holds the yarn to your machine, and they have a crank. So each machine has a crank here, and then on the Sentro larger one, it's here. So each of these machines have a crank. They turn the carriage with the needles, and that's what knits your yarn. Starting out, I know for me, I spent hours just researching and trying to understand what the different terms meant, so I knew how to start a project without any in-depth instructions. So I'm going to move this Sentro out of my way, and I'm going to use the Addi Express so I can go through the different components, because they're basically the same on the Addi and the Sentro. So the first thing is the bed. The bed is the main structure of the knitting machine, and this is where your needles are located here. The carriage is the movable part of the knitting machine, and this moves back and forth across the bed of needles, and it holds the yarn in the needles, and that is what is responsible for the actual knitting. The yarn feeder here is the yarn feeder on the Addi. The yarn feeder on the 22 Sentro is right here. So this is a yarn feeder. And then if I once again grab my larger Sentro, the yarn feeder for that is right here. So when they say start your project, place your yarn in the yarn feeder, this is what they're talking about. The knitting needles here, these are your knitting needles. The knitting needles are part of the machine that holds the yarn as it is being knit. And these on the Sentro and the Addi are made of plastic, and they can break. So you want to take care that they're not getting jammed, and if something's stuck, you want to take a minute and figure out why. For the Sentro, for the Addi machine, if your yarn feeder door here is not closed, what will happen is, let me just try to pop that open. You can see the tip of the hook here is going to hit that, and it will break it, and I don't want to break my machine. So whenever you put the yarn in the yarn feeder, you want to make sure you close before you start turning, because you can see that if this is open, it's going, so you can see it's hitting it right there. I don't want to break it. Again, it's actually pushing up the door. Close it. On the Sentro and the Addi, on the Sentro, the 22, there is no door to close, so there's no, way that you can break it on here. Again, the tensioning system here or here is to control the tension of the yarn as it's being knit. This is important to have in order to produce an evenly tensioned piece of, whatever you're knitting. So again, that comes with practice. And there's no power supply with these. However, you can make these power adaptable with a power drill and then these adaptable plastic covers that you can put on the handle. And I have those actually linked down in the description below. So this just, I have it on the wrong machine. So you have a pink one, or I have a pink one for the Sentro, because if you see here, it's kind of hard, but this dial is bigger than the one on the Addi machine. So I have one for the Addi machine, and then I have one for the Sentro, and this will work on the 22 pin and the larger one. So you just put the adapter over your cover and you just pop it in, and that makes it power or battery powered. It works for, again, once you get comfortable using this and you understand the tension of the yarn, it makes projects go a lot quicker. If you have shoulder issues, if you're cranking out a blanket and you're cranking out tubes that are 300 rows, it can get very tiring. So I find this is a lifesaver. Here I have the large Sentro, the 48 pin, and the 22 pin. They both have the tensioner here. When you get these out of the box, when you receive the Sentro 22, it comes just like this. The only thing you have to attach is the tensioner guide. There's no legs to attach. It comes out of the box ready to go. Large Sentro will come, and you will need to attach the legs. And you can see I have some Velcro, and I cut off the little plastic things that come with this machine. There's no way to attach this to the table other than these little plastic things that you get with the Sentro. This is one thing I do not like about it. So I did try Velcro on my table, which does work. And then the other thing that you can do is you can grab the, I don't know what they call this, the counter grip pads, and you can put this on your table, and this helps with your machine sliding around when you're trying to crank. What happens is you are holding this down as you're cranking, and it tends to put a lot of stress on your fingers and your arm. Or you can hold it down here and it will still tend to slide around. So again, I do not like the suction cups, depending on, you know, what kind of table you're putting it on. Again, the Velcro works fairly well, but I found just getting this non-slip grip pad works fairly well. I have a bigger one, I'm just showing you here. Okay, so let's talk about casting on with the Sentro. The large Sentro comes with a counter. The large Sentro has a counter. The 22 pin does not. In the description, I have a link to a counter that you can actually attach to your machine. It works fantastic. Or you can get a little manual counter one, or you can simply go to the App Store and download literally a counter app. I will link the one that I have if I can find it. And I just put it down on the side of my project, actually on the other side because I'm right-handed. And as I click a row, I tap my phone and it counts the rows for me. And to reset it, you just hold down reset. So this is really cool if you want to try that out. On the Sentro, you can see the pins here are all pink. And I know it's really hard to see, but there's numbers here. So you can see 47, 48, and then there's one white pin. This is number 1. So as you're turning your handle, you come around and you can see this white pin is coming right here. That's one row. And then the counter clicked over. I suggest getting a Sharpie, and I've been using my Addi a lot, so I haven't been using my Sentro so much. But take a Sharpie, you can highlight this pin here so you know, because it's really easy, especially if you decide to get the drill to just go. So as it's going around, you can see it's looping back. 2, especially if your row counter is broken. The Sentro 22, you can see the pins are white. Again, there are numbers here on the machine, but you can see here the pin is black. So same thing, you can take a Sharpie and you can put it right before the black one. So when you start 1, 2, so that is 1 row completed around. So there's a trick for the casting on. So you're gonna drop about 6 or 8 inches in the middle of your working yarn, and this is what we call our working yarn. Here is my white pin to start a row. What you're gonna do is take your yarn and you're gonna loop it around the first white pin. Now what I like to do is drop the 6 or 8 inches into the middle, and I'm gonna call this in front of the pin, and then when I come behind, I'm gonna call it behind the pin. So I'm in front of my pin. I'm making sure that the yarn is under the hook. I'm gonna drop the end of the yarn, and now I'm gonna go behind the second pin. So this is number 1, this is number 2. I'm gonna come in front of the third pin, making sure that this first pin caught. If not, I'm gonna have a drop stitch and I'm gonna have to start over again. So in front, behind, in front, behind, in front, making sure it gets caught under the hook, behind, and I'm gonna do that all the way around the first round. Behind, in front, behind, in front. Now I'm pulling forward and going backwards, so you could say forward, backward, forward, backward. Once you get this, you're going to speed through it. So if this is your first time using a circular knitting machine, I highly suggest taking a piece of yarn and just practice this. Find behind in front, behind in front, behind in front, behind in front, all the way around. Now, when you're working with these balls of yarn, you want to make sure that you have some length pulled out, because you don't want tension. That's going to make this yarn not cooperate with you, and it's going to be very frustrating. So I tend to put it on the floor. Some people put it in a bowl. You can do whatever works for you. So behind in front, behind in front. So here's the red mark, and then here's your white needle. You're going to pop that down into the tensioner, crank, and make sure that that catches. I like to go really slow here to make sure that each needle caught. The first row after is always a little sketchy, and then place your yarn in the tensioner, or if you hold it in your hand. I don't know if you can see here, but as I'm pulling, I'm making the tension really, really taut. And if I let go, it's gonna be really, really loose. You don't wanna just leave it like this. It's going to pop off. You're gonna have a drop stitch. Make sure that this didn't drop. I'm gonna place this in my tensioner. And now I'm gonna spin. Now this is important. You wanna keep an eye out here to make sure you don't have any drop stitches. So now that's 2. When you purchased your Addi Express machine, when you take it out of the box, you're gonna have to attach the legs. Now I just wanna note, people wonder what this is here for. This is so when you flip your machine over, you're not crushing your needles. So you can rest this down. You'll get these in a bag. Simply take it out and they just screw into the bottom. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and they have little nice grips on them. So your machine is now ready to go. The other things that you get in your Addi machine are the leg hooks. These leg hooks wrap around your machine, and then there's a wing nut here and you simply attach it to your table. You'll also get Addi stoppers. Addi stoppers are when you're making panels. You simply just put this in here, so when you're creating a panel, it literally stops the machine from going back any farther. 2 of those. You also get a loom pick, which is a definite, you need this. If you don't have one, please pick one up. Extra white needles and a black needle, and you also get a darning needle. You will also, depending on which package you get, if you get the one that I recommend, you get 2 books, and this is loaded with projects that you can make. And then you get a second one with even more projects. So this set is linked in my bio. First, you want to make sure that this is set to tubular, so plain knitting or circular knitting. So circular knitting is you're making a tube, plain knitting is you're making a panel. Find the black needle. Now on the 46 Addi Express, you get 3 black pins. You can see here I have a marker for the first pin. So if you can see here, number 1 is this first black needle. So let me go back around. So this last white needle is number 46. The first black needle is number 1. To reset your counter on here, it's not a button, you turn the dial. So that's at 0. So for casting on, I'm going to make sure my door is closed, and I'm going to grab my yarn again. I'm going to go again, hook it on the first pin. I'm going to drop my working yarn in the middle, and I'm in front of the pin. I'm going to go behind the next, making sure that that catches. In front of the pin, behind, in front. So now I'm into my first round. Behind, in front, behind, in front, behind, in front, behind, in front, and work your way around. Okay, open the door. I'm going to drop this into my tensioner. I'm going to close the door. Remember, you want to close the door because you don't want this pin to get stuck and get broken. Turn, and this will be row number 2 that I'm going into. Now, again, the first row or 2, you want to make sure, I tend to go a little bit slower. And the first row always makes these little loud cranking noises, but once you get through the first row, it goes away. The Addi machine is a little bit louder than the Sentro, but I love my Addi. And each time you make a row, you hear that loud audible click. That's clicking your row counter here. And that's how you cast on for your Addi machine And to get your yarn off, take the yarn out of the feeder, close your door, and simply turn. And then this will fall off. The trick to take off scrap yarn in less than 1 second. Take your scrap yarn color and you're going to cast on as normal. Make sure that yarn sits down in that yarn feeder completely, otherwise you will have a dropped stitch. I like to do about 5 to 8 rows of waste yarn, completely your preference. I finished with my scrap yarn, the 5 to 8 rows. Here's the trick. Take another contrasting color and you're going to knit 1 row, only 1 row. Cut that. Take your working yarn for your actual project. You're going to now knit however many rows your project is, whether it's a hat or a scarf, fingerless gloves. I like to hold the ends of the yarn here just to make sure I don't have any dropped stitches, nothing gets tucked. Now you're going to take that white color, again contrasting, and you're going to knit 1 row, just 1 row. Cut the end of that off, and then you're going to take the other scrap yarn, again that is a contrasting color, and you're going to do your 5 to 8 rows. Again, completely your preference how many rows you wish to do for that. Now, because this is scrap yarn, to get this off my machine, I'm just going to rotate it around once. When you rotate it around a second time, it just falls off your machine. Take your project and stretch it out. This is just a demo piece, so it's not like the length of a hat or anything. But I'm just going to show you, first of all, the reason why we use scrap yarn is to bind the edges of our project. So say I was making fingerless gloves, I need to bind the end of the tubes on either side. So stretch it out. And I'm going to be working from right to left. Now you have, whether you're using the Sentro or the Addi, 48 or 46 pins. If you really want to be precise, you can just count the number of white loops that you have there, so you know to go back and forth and you're not going to miss any stitches. So here I'm just showing you, you can count to 23 because I use the Addi machine, so it's 46 pins. Again, I'm going to be working right to left. Red is the actual start of the working yarn. I'm just going to pick up the loops from right to left, and you want to slip stitch it, and basically you just take a hook grab it, slip it under, rotate it from the other side and go back and forth. So marry each side until you reach the other end. This is binding off your work. When you reach the last stitch, you should be at the working yarn of your project, and you just need to pull it through to secure the end of the tube. I'm going to go ahead and weave through the second side so you can just see me finish that side as well. And I go through the same process. Now here's the trick to taking scrap yarn off in less than 1 second. You're going to grab the loop on the right side. You're just gonna pull the white scrap yarn. It comes off fairly easily. Boop. Scrap yarn is completely off. That took less than 1 second. And now I'm just going to do the same thing to the other side.